so I'm Marilyn Johansen, and Paint a Story is my, and the other day, how many of you were at the judge's review of the show? Well, he gave me, I wasn't there, I didn't get in till I drove over from Fort Lauderdale over to here when he was doing that. But the one thing that I heard was he wanted to know the story behind my painting. Yes. So I thought, yes, I was a success, because that was the whole idea, was to, you know, I didn't need to win a prize, just to hear that he wanted to know the story meant that my painting was a success. I don't know if you saw it, but anyway, it's this kamikaze. So I was raised in a military family. My father was born in 1921, and when the World War II broke out, he was just the right age. And before, you know, the war was, with the U.S. was involved, we were very involved in knowing that this war was in Europe. So there were a lot of Americans paying attention. And he was just a farm kid. He was raised on a farm, had never been anywhere in his life, had never taken a vacation or anything. It was a big, you know, group of kids. He's one of 6, he's the oldest. And he would have his sights set on becoming a pilot, which he did. Now back then there was no Air Force, there was the Army Air Corps. He went in, and then he comes out, he survives World War II, and I'm born. When he comes back, he meets my mother, and I'm born, and I live this life as a military kid. So from birth through age 17, I travel the world. So, and my father was a big history buff, so I think that's where my mind is always telling stories, because that's how I grew up, listening to all these things, and pretty much growing up on the front row of history, because there's a lot of things about living in a military family that other civilians don't know. So I used to live here in St. Pete. How many of you are from St. Pete here? Oh, only one. All right. I used to teach at Perkins Elementary.
I graduated Seminole High School.
You what?
I graduated Seminole High School.
Seminole High School? I used to do, after I finished teaching at Perkins, I did substitute work at St. Pete High and Boca Ciega High School. So, so St. Pete, and my parents are buried here, and when Robin just mentioned that the painting is going to Bay Pines, that's where they're buried. So it's, that's really special. So thank you all for coming. What I'm going to show you today, and what you see here, are paintings, and I use different styles of paintings. So, yeah.
Tell me which one.
Just pick up any one and put it down, and then we'll go to another one. Yeah. So these, yeah. So we're going to start with this first painting. So,
How's it look?
yeah. Okay. So this is a painting that came out of something that happened in my life. My husband was, when I met my husband here in the St. Pete area, and we married, I would find out that he was a Vietnam veteran. And this was part of a letter that he wrote, and this was a photograph that he took while he was there. Now, 1968, that was the height of the Tet Offensive, which was a really bad time to be there. And especially since he had joined the Marines, it was a really bad time to be there. But he made it back. Now, somebody asked me earlier today, was he okay when he came back? Physically, he was okay. Mentally, it's been a journey. But that's what life's about. A lot of journeys, and things happen for a reason. So we were, you know, he survived this. He recently took an honor flight that I had a hard time talking him into, but he was so thrilled with the attention and the thanks and the appreciation that he felt on the honor flight, that he now volunteers for honor flight and goes into the VAs and talks to all the veterans. Encourage anyone from the Vietnam era up, so that Vietnam, Korea, World War II, there's still some World War II guys that are alive. We're losing them a lot, but you know, encourage them to take an honor flight if you have that. So this little, this came, I wanted to do something for my husband before he and I would go to my father. My father passed away in 1990, and he's buried at Bay Pines. I think I said that. But I wanted something to, before we went to the reunion for Stalag Luft 3, did any of you ever see the movie The Great Escape? Okay, so he was in that camp. Any of you seen the new series, TV series called Masters of the Air? Okay, so that's about Stalag Luft 3 too. The end of it, that group of pilots out of England, they end up in Stalag Luft 3 and the march in January, where they march out of the camp. So anyway, so this painting was done before I went to the Stalag Luft 3 reunion to honor my husband's. And this was the first military painting that I did. And I started putting it in shows and it was turned down. I'm thinking, must be a lousy painting. It can't get into anything. I finally put it in a show, and this particular art group let us talk to the judge. Because a lot of times you put your stuff in the stuff and you don't know. The judge said, oh, I love that painting. Keep it. She says, but it doesn't fit. There was no place in all the paintings she had picked. You have your abstract, you have your landscape, you have your portrait. There was no military. So she says it doesn't fit because it doesn't go. So then I realized that I had something here, but it was going to be separate. So that's why I started my soldier stories paintings. And like I pointed out, after Robin, when I first got it going, Robin invited me, and more paintings came from that experience just because she invited me. Because what we would do is we would invite veterans and let them see the paintings and then have a talk. So this is traditional watercolor painting, but with 3 elements: the flag, the photo, and the letter. And this painting, I noticed when it did get into shows that people spent a lot of time looking at it and reading the letter. So can you put this back, and we'll go for the any one of the next ones. Okay. So I use different styles. I don't always use the same style. I took a workshop from Kathleen Conover. Any of you had taken a workshop with her or heard of her? Okay, she invented this gesso juice style. And I'm going to demo that today because it's a really, really fun style. Okay, this is traditional painting again, but this is a story. And yeah, thank you for reminding me. This is framed. It's a little big for this. Okay, but you get the idea. So this was a lady that I knew. Her name was Mrs. Chu. She was born in 1921 in China to a very wealthy family. But in 1921, Mao Zedong came into China, and he took all the things from the wealthy families. He took everything from them. She escaped to Taiwan. She would meet her husband and marry, and they had a home. By the time I met her, she was living in Okinawa, but she always, there was something very special about her, and that's why I did this painting of her. I realized that she was a woman whose family had lost everything, and she still survived, and she made a life for herself. So, and Mr. Chu would tell me that she was considered one of the most beautiful, in her prime, her age. She's in her 40s in this portrait, because this is when I knew her. She was one of the most beautiful women in China. So the sad part is the black and white orchids, and then her in colors, but not dressed up or anything. She's just got a headscarf on, and you can change that out. Traditional style again, but factors of yes.
May I ask about the writing?
Yes. So I lived in Okinawa, Japan, so I learned how to write the letters.
What does it say?
It doesn't say anything.
Oh, okay.
But I like your question. Her question was about the letters. So any of you have seen Asian paintings? They all have like the writing on the side, because that's telling the story of the painting.
Yeah, I just, because I use that.
So that was another thing that influenced my paintings as well. Thanks. All right, this is gesso juice. Do you see the effect that I get here? Now, when I went to do this painting, this is my grandmother and her sister. And I thought they wore, my grandmother was born in 1897. And she's 6 years old in this picture. And this is her sister, so she was probably born she was 3, so she was probably born around 1900. This is them in Poland, and their mother has just left them. The parents had a disagreement. The father wanted to stay in Poland. The mother wanted to come to the United States. The Balkan Wars were going on in Poland, and this is just pre-World War I, which was the communist takeover of Russia. And they lived in a town right near the Ukrainian border. So this is her, when the little pinafore white dresses that the little girls wore at that time is what they have on. And I thought, how am I going to do this? It's not going to be interesting, these little white pinafore dresses. But when I started this painting 3 times, because I started to paint it traditionally, and I didn't like it, and I didn't like it, and I didn't like it. So I decided I'm going to try this gesso juice. So I went on with the gesso juice, and you can see it, but look at the interest. To me, I just love the interest that is created here. And I always put gesso juice on top of another painting, a painting that's not going anywhere. You know, we all have those. So you can put this in fact, it's better on top of something else because I get some of that painting comes through, and I'm going to demo this gesso juice so you can see that. Thank you. And then the final one. Now this is, I realized that with my soldier stories, I had stories. This one isn't particularly a strong story, but it's very well liked painting. And there is a story behind it. This is my nephew who was he was a CPA in Houston, Texas, and he signed up for the reserves. So any of you are familiar, you can sign up for the reserves and you get extra money. And then once a month or whatever the group is doing, you go for training. So it was extra money. But what happened was he got called up, his group, and he did 13 months in Iraq. This was a photo that he took, and I did it with, I had taken a workshop with Jeannie McGuire. Any of you familiar with her? And she did this flat brush. So you use a flat brush, and you make all your marks, which was perfect for all of the camouflage that they wear. I thought it made the painting a whole lot more interesting than trying to use the traditional style. And this one is a favorite when I hang the series. Okay, so the one thing that we want to learn here is about this gesso juice. So I have a painting, where'd it go? Here it is. So I did this, when I'm called to do a demo, I usually do this painting here which I started and then I never finished, so we're going to use this for the gesso juice. Now, if you have the paper in front of you, on there is the recipe. So this is how you do it. Now, I'm going to do this in stages, and I'm going to show you other paintings with this gesso juice because this is going to take a full day to dry. Now, this is particular, I use 140 and 300. Does anybody have any questions on that? On the 140 and 300 paper? Okay, so you can use either. Some of my paintings are on, I just go in different moods. So you pour your gesso juice, so you take those three things and you mix them together. It takes a bit to mix it, to get it the way you want it. Can everybody see? And then I don't use a brush. You use much better effect with the credit card. Now this is a Hilton. It's not this time, it was another trip that I went on. You know, they want you to turn them back in. I'm going, that's a good card. So, now for different, if you know what you're going to put on here, you can, you know, maybe smooth that one area out a little more than others. I did a painting of one of my neighbors who was a biker. He was a rough-looking guy, really rough-looking guy. He got into fights, he fell off his motorcycle, so sometimes he was pretty banged up. But he had this bird, a gray bird, what is it? A what? African gray, thank you. He had an African gray that sat on his shoulder all the time. And I asked him if I could do a photo shoot with him and that bird. And I ended up, because he was a rough guy, I decided I was going to put him on the gesso juice. Because the gesso juice gives a rough feel. Anyway, when I did that painting, I'm going to show you, I did this. I went around and around because I wanted to bring him in. He's holding his bird, and you can feel the love between this really rough character and this bird. And you know, that painting sold, and I couldn't imagine why this woman wanted to buy it, but she liked it for whatever reason. And then you see this, I can get these little dots. Now you can play with this for a while. And you can see from this, because this painting has a lot of white, this isn't as interesting as this is. So that's why you put it over an old painting. And if this dries and you want it a little whiter, you can put another coat on, but it has to dry completely. This, you can't go painting on this at all. That's why we're doing this in stages. And I'm going to show you a final one at the end. But this is gesso juice.
So you do not paint on this afterwards?
After it dries.
After it dries.
After it dries, because I'm going to do that in a minute. So I'm going to take, now it's gesso and matte medium. So you're going to run into, you know, if I don't clean this edge of this jar, it's going to stick. This matte medium is like glue.
And how long does it last?
What? This, I put it in a jar in a dark room, a closet, and I've had it last a year.
Marilyn, where do you get the matte medium? Just anywhere? Matte medium?
Okay, so her question is, where do I get the matte medium? You have to make it. That's why I gave you the recipe.
That's the matte medium?
That's the matte medium.
But that's not the recipe.
No, she makes
That's
it.
just-
Matte, I'm sorry. Matte medium is something that you buy. Golden's matte medium, yeah.
Joe's, anybody.
Huh?
Joe's, Michael's.
Yeah, and they all carry the matte medium. Yeah, and then the gesso, and the gesso that you want is not expensive gesso. You want the cheap, student grade gesso it says liquidy, because you don't want, when I took Kathleen Conover's workshop, I bought full body gesso. Well, I had to go buy the other because that was not fun. All right, so this is, you know, this is on here, and I will start to work on this painting after it dries, which will be at least a day.
Marilyn, how do you paint that home? So wet.
It's so wet. I've done this before, so it sits on that board, and I just have to be gingerly with it. The last time I demoed, the guy said, "Why don't you just toss it out?" I said, "It might be a good painting." I'm too careful, I guess. All right, so you need a little composition. I'm fascinated with these birds. I'm going to show you these. So here's the deal with the gesso juice. You can't, if you're going to draw and you're going to sketch on top of this gesso juice, you got to keep erasing. That's not going to work. So what I suggest you do is you draw and erase on tracing paper. So I'm fascinated with birds. It could be because when I was a little kid, my mother pointed to the sky, my father was up there in a jet, and she says, "There's your father," and I thought he was a bird. I don't know. That's my theory. So I love interesting bird, you know, the way that they move and their little heads, you know. I like all that stuff. You see, some people, they just draw a bird, like, you know. So I find these interesting shots that I take of birds, and then I use those in my compositions. But again, I have to draw them on this tracing paper and then transfer them onto the gesso juice. And I had to do that with the drawing of everything that I put on the gesso juice. And you need, you know, like a basic good composition. So the painting that I'm gonna, one of them anyway, that I'm gonna do today is, here we go, this composition. So I like this bird. I cut him out in black paper. I've got this gray paper, and I get these ideas in my head. People say, "Do you paint every day?" And I don't paint every day, but I'm thinking about painting every day. So this is a bird in a tree. So this is the tree. And he's on a branch. Oh, let's see. Let me put this branch here. So this would be kind of could be you know, in the nighttime, that this bird is, maybe it's the moon behind his head. We just recently had the full moon. And so this composition would work well. I've got the branch. So I've got this side, I've got this, I've got a round, and I've got an interesting shape for my bird. Took that bird, I was at a beach and I just took my cell phone and I just was fascinated with that angle. I could also do this in the daytime without the moon behind them. And I could actually even use these colors for the tree. And the branch. So it could be a daylight view of the bird. Same bird. Okay, so you get the idea, and probably some of the other demos that you've seen have had, you know, value studies. So that's how you can work things out with your value study. So you can see I did this. I did this during COVID. Again, I was fascinated with the bird, and we were all stuck inside. And this made no sense, but I liked it at the time. So here's the drawing. This is another that I did of that same bird, another demo that I did of this bird looking into an abyss and then the shadow of his legs. Same bird. He'll probably be in another few paintings somewhere. All right. So, and then I did one of this bird. So let's get going. Again, like I said, when you draw onto this gesso juice, you know, you need to transfer it from.
Marilyn, how do you transfer? Do you use graphite on the
I
back
do,
of it?
yes, yes. It's the only way to do it, because you can't, now interestingly enough, I don't know if we can see it here, but when you hold these up, you can see the painting that's underneath.
You can zoom it.
How many of you went to the Salvador Dali Museum? So if, I would encourage you to go and take the docent tour. There's a, oh, yeah, this is, how come it's coming so big?
I just zoomed it.
Oh, okay.
Did you want me to zoom it?
Unzoom it.
Okay. I thought you wanted to zoom it.
So there's a painting of Salvador Dali with, it's kind of like two people, and there's a, I forget, it's a basket, I think. Anybody see that there? It may not, because they keep changing the exhibit, but there was a painting that they have that sometimes is displayed there of a basket. And actually, Salvador Dali had heard that his parents had a child and named him Salvador Dali, and he died. And he did this painting of this parent, it was his parents with the little casket. And then he decided to paint over it with a basket. But he was fascinated with the fact that there was a dead baby with the same name as him. So I lived here in St. Pete. My father retired out of MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa. That was his last assignment when we came back from Okinawa. And I would go to Hollins High School here and University of South Florida right across the street. Now, none of these fancy buildings were here at the time. It was just Albert Whitted Airport and two military barracks. That's what I went to. But University of South Florida back then didn't have any teams. So let's get, I'm going to get a little ultramarine blue and a little Payne's gray here. To get this dark in here. And I really don't need to be real careful because I can go on top. Now this brush is an Escoda, and they really hold a lot of, this is a paint. So you need a lot of paint to go over this. And then you see that I didn't put the gesso juice all the way to the end. Now you can do that, it's up to you. I kind of like the fact that it gives me a little frame, the darkness. But in the painting of my grandmother's, I was working on the painting and I wanted those dresses to be white to the edge. So after I'd started the painting, I added more gesso juice with the credit card just in that area.
Marilyn, can you move it down a little bit?
Oh, okay. Now see how it's puddling there? I kind of like that. So this kind of does its own thing. really fun. Because I'm gonna go over, this bird is gonna end up being black, so. I don't need to be real careful. But I do want to keep this moon Oh, we gotta get to that. Her question was, can you lift? Absolutely, and that's the most fun part. Because you're working, any of you, if you've ever worked with matte medium, you know that you can put that down, you can lift right off of that. So this is just ultramarine blue and Payne's gray. Again, see how it's puddling? And it's creating that interesting sky over there. Now, let's see, so I want to get some of this. It really is easy to lift.
Will the staining look like the staining blues also lift off of the staining colors lift?
To a point. That's why over here I have watercolor crayons, and I have in white. And if it doesn't lift enough, I put watercolor crayon in white over it. Okay, I'm going to get a dark brown.
Was this base another painting before?
What?
This base that you have, was that another painting
Yes,
before?
yes. Yeah, I put it over a painting because I get all this, interesting, and the background is pretty much the same as what I'm using. I always go over something, and if I don't have something, I will just throw paint on the white paper.
So you don't put it on something that had the gesso? It's a painting that didn't have gesso?
Right. It was a regular, a traditional painting that didn't go anywhere. But you need a lot of paint when you're painting on this gesso. Notice I'm not, making a whole, I'm doing it for that, and I may end up with some blooms here, which would be fine with me. And again, the edges are not got gesso. You can see that area does not have gesso on it. But if I change my mind, I can add gesso, let it dry a whole day. All right. I'm going to do one more thing on this before he's going to. You see already, do you see the blooms happening? So I kind of like those. I'm going to leave them, and I'm going to get a little yellow in this one. Again, I don't have to worry about the bird because the bird's going to be black.
What yellow are you using?
This is just a CAD yellow medium. She asked me what yellow I'm using, and this is a CAD yellow medium.
Can you see the drawing process, like with hair dry?
I usually don't. I don't like using a hair dryer. When I did most of my painting, I was going through menopause. It wasn't pleasant. So I never got in that habit. All right, so we're going to let this dry, and I'm going to show you a few other paintings. All right, so talking about some of the matte mediums, these are a few things you can do. This is an old painting, but I'm showing it to you because do you see the little feet? Well, so this is a painting of two of my grandchildren, and they're in high school now. They're big, but I painted the bottom of their feet with matte medium. Now I've had them practice first because they were pretty little, especially this guy. But he thought it was really cool that his grandmother wanted to bring him in her room, paint this stuff on his feet, and tell him to walk on this paper. So those are their little footprints, hers on top of his. And anyway, so I have this, so you can always do something like this. You could, even if you were doing a portrait, you could do it with their little hands, and then, like, I don't know about your grandkids, but my grandkids thought this was swell. I had them walking, I had a towel waiting, then I picked them back up and I washed his feet. And more stories. So when we talked about the Chinese painting and the story, on the side, that is the story of this woman. When we lived in Brussels, Belgium, my father had a State Department assignment during the Cold War, and we were in Brussels, and I started school. I was 5 when we moved there. She was a woman, she was the mistress to a very wealthy Belgian industrialite. She lived in our building, and my parents, some of the people would not talk to her, but my parents befriended her, and she became a big part of my life. So she had this beautiful apartment, and she would babysit us from time to time. So when she would babysit us, she would have her maid fix us dinner in courses. We would have finger bowls and all this. So I learned to entertain with all this fancy attitude. Now, she was raised in Europe, sadly. The reason that she became who she became is because she was raised in Europe during World War II as a child. And her father was big in the French military, and they moved her around trying to keep her safe, but they didn't. She was probably raped at the end of the war. She was 14 at the end of the war. And this photograph that my father took of her, she was 24 years old. So, her choices in life. And she did eventually, my parents talked her into leaving him. I'm not sure it was a good thing, but because her life was never the same again. But she had this beautiful, fancy life. And she ended up marrying an artist and coming to the States and living here. So, but she never had any children. So I talk about, regular stories, and this is traditional. I painted this when my mother was going into the nursing home, and I call it Waiting on Time. So I had taken this photograph of these people in a train station in Kansas City where I was visiting one of my sons, and but then I added all this other stuff because these people were waiting at the train station.
What's the significance of the numbers stenciled on there, the 14?
I found a photograph of a train ticket with those numbers on them. Yeah, so there was no real meaning other than that. And then, of course, my fascination with birds. So when I was a kid, my father told me that when the birds fly in formation, the pilots copied them. The birds came first, and the pilots learned from the birds. I live on the ocean in Fort Lauderdale, and these pelicans, they come by in formation, and they fly, and you'll see them early in the morning. It's beautiful, and they're really close to the water because they're looking for breakfast. So I painted pelicans in all different styles and things, and this is called styling pelican because this one's really into those hibiscus flowers. Again, I like the way the pelicans position themselves, and so that's the whole painting. 10 minutes? This is pelicans on the gesso juice painting, and you can see the beautiful colors that I get here. And it's over another painting. These were pelicans from a bird sanctuary. You have a bird sanctuary here in St. Pete, but this was one in Fort Lauderdale. And these are and you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but this is the white crayon that I put over here because I can't get it any lighter because it's over a dark. So you can always do that. And maybe you come up with some other way of doing it too, but that's what I use.
Do you wet the watercolor crayon first or after?
No,
Just put it on.
just put it on. So, 10 minutes. Okay, this is the white pelican. They're also from the bird sanctuary. These birds are all, they can't live out in the wild anymore. They wouldn't survive. But again, it's all stories that I write here. And the ones that got into Northlight Books was a pelican painting. And I wrote about the day that I went to take the photographs. I went to Flamingo Gardens in Davie, Florida, and the flamingos were mating that day. Well, you get nothing in paint because they fight, One goes and another goes, and you're going, I saw that. So I walked into the bird sanctuary and got all these paintings. This is, I just painted with the matte medium. This is not gesso juice, but it is painted with matte medium. And Kitty Burry, I think, is demoing later today. If you want to watch an artist that is amazing with matte medium, go to her demo. But this is, taken from Kit. Actually, I saw her do a white horse on a white background, so I decided to do a white pelican on a white background. This went into the Louisiana Watercolor Society. They like pelicans too. All right, let's get back to this. And get this guy in.
There's 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes, so we can see if we can get.
And if they miss that demo, it will be recorded.
Okay. When I do this, I add a little. If you were one of my students, I don't let them use just plain black. I studied with Charles Passarelli. I don't know if any of you know him. He is a member of the Florida Watercolor Society. He doesn't always put a painting in. He got his signature quite a few years ago. But he was, any of you watch the show Mad Men? Well, that's who he was. He actually made his living and fed his family off of his art. So he always said, never use plain black, always add a red and a blue, which I do. And when I teach, that's one of my, if you're in my classroom, my students will tell you, oh, you can't use black. I said, well, we can use black. But when you get a little more advanced, and you see how pretty those colors are than if I just took black, and this is gesso, by the way, this is not transparent watercolor. I'm not, sorry, not gesso, gouache. So I have a little black on the brush, but I'm going into the gouache of the ultramarine and the alizarin crimson.
Marilyn, has all of your paint been gouache that you used?
No, no.
You used
This is,
watercolor first?
yep.
So only the black is wash?
Yeah, the black is gouache because I want it really strong because it's on this gesso juice. And you notice I made a puddle for this, but you can see I may have to go over it because it's drying a little too light from what I want. But the bird is turning out okay. He's going to work here.
And you have the red and the blue in that black, or just?
No, I have, if you can see, I have alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue. This is the black gouache. These are all gouache. This is just regular Payne's gray, which I used in the blue, the background here, which I may have to do another coat. So with this darker paint, I can go back in here and add darks underneath, you know, to... Now, one of the things, I don't know if you all use this or not, but I use a lot of flat brushes. And I can't paint without a hacky brush. I don't know if it's the years in Okinawa or what, but you can soften. So you don't wet this. This is what I call a dry brush. And even when you say you paint dry brush, you're actually using a wet brush. This is a totally dry brush. See this bloom?
What did you call that?
It's a hacky brush. It's an Asian. So if you have a bloom, you can take your hacky brush. What it does, or any dry brush, actually. You see what's happening to my brush? It's picking up the paint. So when I got that bloom, it's because the water was sitting there and everything else around it was drying. And so once I get that dry brush effect, I can pick up water with the brush, because you can see it's picking it up. And I don't put this in water. I keep wiping it off. And I keep using it to get a nice blend. Now I'm going to show you, like, working with This is a portrait of my husband's grandmother done on the gesso juice. This is a painting, I'm not even sure it's finished yet, but it's me, a little younger. So in order to get all this blending, that was the dry brush. Because I would put it on, because this is gesso juice that I'm working on. And in order to get, because you can't paint on this, it's not soaking into that color, that watercolor paper. And, you know, and here's the bird, the one that I did have it ready to go, but I think we've run out of time. But anyway, so you can see that I put him in here, and, you know, This is a story of my heritage. So I'm Eastern European German, so there's the forests and the hooded, the Goldilocks, and then the birch trees. So, and these birds are flying. So, are there any questions? Yes?
With the hockey brush working as well on plain watercolor? with
Yes,
the brush?
yes. Anytime you start to get a bloom, you can use this dry, and I keep it dry. I will probably, unless, it depends on how much you use it, because you see it's starting to pick up paint, and I can't get it back off. So I may have to go to another brush, because I will start putting that color back onto the paint. So you'd have to, yes, yes. So she wanted to know if, about the hacky brush. Any other questions?
Do you use mostly wash or mostly transparent watercolor?
Depending on what I'm painting. And you can see with working with this gesso juice that I need thick paint. Although you can see in my painting of my grandmothers, around their heads, I just put a very light wash on. And I did get some blooms and I left them. Yes?
I missed the first part of your speech. How do you do gesso?
Okay, you have to make it yourself. Nobody has decided, no manufacturer has decided to produce this yet. And so, did you get a handout at the?
No, I did not.
Are there, is she,
I don't know if there are any more left, but you
are there any more left, or they were left?
Take a picture of it.
Yeah,
I've got an extra.
Give it.
Thank you so much.
thank you.